Hi, folks, and welcome to the Meaningful Money podcast. This is session number 330. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you put your finances in order. My name is Pete Matthew, and I'm going to share with you everything you need to know and everything you need to do to secure your financial future. I'm here to help you make sense of money. Here we are once again with another in-between episode. Season 15 will begin in September. So throughout the summer, we're doing some one-off shows just highlighting some pretty cool people that I've been able to speak to over the last few weeks. So looking forward to sharing all of those with you. But this one is going to be really special. I think you're going to enjoy it because lots of you have suggested actually that I get today's guest onto the show. And though it took a while, though that's down to me and not him, I'm really chuffed that we've made it happen. Listening back to the interview again as I was editing, just some great stuff here. I really don't think it's the last time that this guy will be on the show either. So stay tuned for a blinding conversation with Barney Whiter, a.k.a. the Escape Artist. Really looking forward to bringing it to you. We'll do in just a sec. As usual, I'll introduce what we're talking about next time. Read out a review that's been left. But before any of that, remember this podcast continues to be brought to you with the help of my friends at 7 Investment Management. They've been sponsoring me here since 2011, bless them. Couldn't have done it without them. So please do check out what they're up to. They're at 7im.co.uk. That's the number 7im.co.uk. Also, don't forget the Meaningful Money branded self-investment platform that they have built, and definitely check that out for a simple, easy way to get started with your investment or to diversify your existing investments. All the information you need on that is at meaningfulmoney.tv/podcastinvest. meaningfulmoney.tv/podcastinvest. Slightly weird URL, I know, but it just means I know where people came from. Okay, that being said, the FIRE movement, the Financial Independence, Retire Early, is really gathering pace here in the UK. As ever, we're a few years behind our cousins in the US, where really the FIRE movement is a big deal now. The movement to take financial control and make working optional as early as possible, I think it's going to disrupt, or at least it has the potential to disrupt a great deal about the economy at large, financial services as an industry and profession, potentially our culture as a whole. I think it's a big deal. So the Escape Artist, Barney Whiter, he is at the forefront of the UK FIRE movement. Everybody knows that this guy is doing great work. I really, really enjoyed our conversation. Could have easily carried on, but had to cut it short. About 50 minutes, so a little bit longer than usual, but I know you're going to enjoy it. Remember, any notes, links and stuff, all at the show notes, meaningfulmoney.tv/session330. meaningfulmoney.tv/session330. But this one's special enough for me to put a special URL in. So meaningfulmoney.tv/escape artist. All right, meaningfulmoney.tv/escape artist, and that'll get you to the episode with Barney as well. Okay, without further ado, here's my conversation with the Escape Artist. Well, what a pleasure this is. I've been looking forward to this one because today I'm joined by Barney Whiter of the Escape Artist blog, UK phenomenon really when it comes to the whole financial independence, retire early space. And Barney, it's great to have you on the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing brilliant. It's great to be here at last.
Well, it's really odd. We had a sort of Twitter conversation. A few people have said to me over the years, you need to get the Escape Artist on. You need to speak to the Escape Artist. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'll do that. And finally, we ended up having a Twitter conversation. And then I looked back and realized that we'd have a conversation on email 2 years ago where I'd hopefully graciously sort of said, no, I'm not looking for interview guests at the minute. And I thought, oh my God, I must have sounded extremely up myself at the time. But it's
well, there's just, I remember that there's just not that many people kind of putting out kind of great stuff on personal finance in the mainstream media, and so your podcast was kind of well known to me, a while back. So it's great to be here now.
Yeah, great. Well, it's good to have you here, man. Let's just for folks who don't know who you are, can you just give us something of a backstory? Who you are, what you do, and what you used to do, and how you got to this point?
Yeah, I'm Barney. I write a blog called The Escape Artist, which is it's kind of a blog about personal finance and financial independence and kind of how you can get to a point where work hopefully becomes optional, and you've achieved a state of financial freedom. And I've been writing that for about 5 years now. I used to be an accountant, I originally trained as, and I quit that about 5 years ago and started writing the blog. And I've kind of been seeing where that takes me ever since.
Most people do that the other way around. They sort of start writing a blog, or I think of like Damien at Money to the Masses. He was doing it, and me to a point, doing it sort of spare time in the evenings while still doing the main job. But you like quit and then started.
Yeah, I mean, if I had my time again, I would have started earlier. I'd started the blog earlier. I did have one of those kind of jobs that was crazy and intense and full time and some. So I wouldn't maybe have done the blog justice had I started it when I had a job. The beauty of it now is I have a lot more time, and I've got a lot more headspace to write. Yeah,
that's important, obviously. What was the trigger for starting the Escape Artist blog? What was it really that got you going, and what was the motivation?
Yeah, so I mean, it runs pretty deep in me, I guess. So I've always been super kind of weirdly interested in money and interested. I've got this this irrational fear of poverty and poverty in general, and being homeless in particular. And when I kind of psychoanalyze myself, I can trace that back to 1981 when I was 11, and interest rates went to 17%. Mm-hmm. And my parents had just moved house, and they'd done the kind of classic British thing of stretch yourself on the property ladder and get the biggest house that you can afford, and kind of borrow as much as you can, and then spend money on the house. So that it's a bit awkward then when you've done that and interest rates go to 17%.
Terrifying.
And so we kind of had a moment in the family where the newspaper got cancelled. My dad stopped buying beer, started brewing his own beer. That year's holiday got cancelled. And I think, I mean, it was no big deal with hindsight. I think at the time picked up the idea that money, if you get it wrong, can be scary. And in particular, debt can be scary. And ultimately, if you borrow money and you can't meet the payments, then ultimately the bank can come for you.
Yeah. So that was something of the trigger. So what is your motivation for writing like you do? What do you want to do for people?
So I discovered in 2013 the Mr. Money Moustache blog in the US. And it was an eye-opener for me, because here was this guy who had retired at the age of 30. And when you find someone on the internet who's claiming to have unlocked the secret to financial riches, and he's retired at 30, and you too can follow his formula, well, naturally, your first reaction is, what a load of rubbish. This is some sort of scam. How is this guy trying to take my money from me? So I went through his blog with a pretty fine tooth comb, looking for the scam and looking for the catch, but I couldn't find it. And the truth was, the more I read of it, the more I realized that this guy had done what I'd done. So he'd kind of worked hard and saved hard and invested his money, but he'd done it even more to a more kind of extreme level, if you like. And he'd started earlier, and so he'd been able to achieve this seemingly impossible thing of becoming free of mandatory work at the age of 30. And what really struck me about that blog was the clarity of the writing. It just seemed to open up the message to a much wider audience than the quite narrow audience of people that are traditionally interested in personal finance blogs. So I was very struck by that. I emailed him saying, I've written you a guest post. Please would you publish it? And he very politely said, no, I won't publish your guest post. But why don't you start your own blog? Because the UK is crying out for something like that. And so that's what I did. I started my own blog. And I've been kind of spreading those ideas since.
And you're doing a great job. You have a wonderfully unique voice in the way you do it, which I literally spat coffee over my screen over one of your posts, the Britney Spears work bitch post.
Yes,
genuinely made me laugh out loud. But so I love the way you write, man, and it's great because it makes it real, and there's no fluff, and there's no sort of opacity around it. It's very clear, very direct, which this stuff desperately needs. I am very excited about the whole FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. I think it's arguably the best thing that's happened to personal finance in many, many years, and I think it's going to disrupt a lot of things, not least my industry, which we'll perhaps come on to a little bit later, and I'm fine with that, for the record. I just wonder, though, if you can perhaps just give me your sort of take on the history of that movement. You've mentioned, obviously, Mr. Money Mustache, who's arguably the biggest name in the movement, but sort of who else you are reading and watching in that space, but just your general take on it as a movement, its history and where it's going.
Yes, I mean, you can trace the roots right back in history to kind of different strands of thought. There was a book published in 1854 called Walden by Henry David Thoreau. And it's just the story of a guy that who turns his back on kind of consumer society, kind of almost before there was a consumer society. But he builds his own log cabin in the woods in America and lives a kind of simple, low-cost life, kind of catching his own fish, going to the market on a Saturday and trading stuff that he's made for other people's food, and living in the house that he made himself. And so, you can trace that those concepts of simplicity, frugality, rugged individualism, creativity. I mean, you can trace them back to the people that settled the West. The people that rolled across the plains on their wagons and their caravans. So there's that kind of stream of history. In the UK, we have a very different history and a longer history. And in some ways, we have the example of the aristocracy, the people who were traditionally, if you like, the idle rich or the leisured classes, and they lived off passive income. And those guys have kind of given financial independence a bad rap in the UK. The idea, what I think is new about FI is it's the democratization of some of those ideas that have been known to the rich, to the 1%, to the aristocracy for generations, but have never been accessible or even known about by the middle class or the working class. And so you can trace all these ideas back a long, long, long way. And I could talk for hours about it.
Cool. That's why you're here, man. So if somebody was to ask you, what is FI, F-I, or whatever, could you sort of give them like a potted version of the sort of central main tenets of the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, you can break it down different ways. Financial independence is the situation where you no longer have to work in order to support yourself. So it's fine to carry on working, and in many ways, I'm an advocate for that. I'm not particularly an advocate of retirement, certainly not in the traditional sense. But financial independence is about the freedom to choose whether you work or not, how much work you do, and the terms and conditions of that work that you choose to do. So it's just about having choices.
Yeah, nicely put. The sort of logical next question, at least logical to my mind, is so there's got to be some kind of formula, right? What does it mean to have that freedom? I know everybody's lifestyle is different, but is there some kind of rule of thumb that is used in the movement as having, quotes, enough?
Yes. So I'll come to that. The kind of famous kind of safe withdrawal rate, or the 25 times rule, in a sec. But I guess before that, I think it's helpful to think about 4 elements of how you get to that state of financial independence, that state where you have the choice of how much to work. The 4 elements are: 1, earning more. 2 is spending less. 3 is investing the difference wisely. And then the 4th and the final element is knowing how much is enough.
Nice.
So those are the 4 elements that I kind of break down financial independence or the approach to financial independence into those 4 elements.
There's never been a better time to earn more, I would argue. There's certainly more opportunity, different opportunities, which pre-internet just wouldn't have existed. Do you agree with that generally?
Well, the first thing to say is there's no upper limit on your earnings, okay? So the problem with frugality, if you like, is that you can only cut so far, sure. Right? But there is no upper limit on how much you can earn. And so the default assumption that many people have in their heads, they would never explicitly say it in this way, is that my income is kind of capped at my current level. You know, that's the ceiling. And the truth is there is no ceiling. The other thing that I think is worth saying is, you know, saving is clearly a lot easier the higher your income is.
Of course it is, yeah.
So, you know, we in the kind of financial independence movement kind of often talk blithely about, oh, you should save, 50+% of your income. You know, clearly that's easier when you're on a higher income. Yeah. Okay. And so a big element of this is not just how do you cut back, it's about, how do you maximize your earnings, if this is the goal, if financial independence is your goal, earning more is a key part of that. And just at the most basic level, one of the things I say to people is just go and sit down with your boss. Okay, so just maybe it's at your next performance review, or maybe you can do it before then, and just say to them, what is it going to take for me to get promoted to the next level? Okay. And that conversation will tell you different things. Like, often people haven't had that basic conversation. Often the boss will be pleasantly surprised by it. It's kind of a sign of ambition and get up and go. And the answer will either be, well, these are the things that you need to do to get promoted, or the answer will be, well, there's nothing that you can do. In which case, that is your cue to re-enter the job market and look elsewhere. So there's how do you maximize your income if you're currently in a job? How do you maximize the income in that job, or in the role above it, or in another role in your industry? Or there's career change, or there's, can I have some sort of side hustle or lifestyle business that runs alongside my my day job? And I think that's a very achievable. So if you are kind of in a job and in an area where you're kind of stuck and it's hard to move up and get promoted, if I'd been in that situation, I would have devoted more of my efforts to a side hustle, to kind of how I get some other income coming in. As it were, on my particular journey, I focused more on I was in an industry where there was a path to progression, there was a path to higher earnings. And so I kind of focused all my energies on my job, and I didn't have a side business or a side hustle. I didn't have time for that.
No, exactly. But it's good that there are options, isn't it?
Exactly. So there are always options.
Yeah. So step 2, obviously, if it's about earning more and then spending less, this is a discipline, clearly. And like you say, there's only so far it can go. But you talk about the prison camp of I don't want to put words in your mouth, but almost the sort of current state of life in a Western economy, the sort of consumerist mindset. You just sort of fill that out, because it's hard to escape from a prison camp. That's the whole kind of MO of your site, isn't it?
Well, it's particularly hard to escape from a prison camp if you haven't yet realized that you're living in a prison camp.
Yeah.
Right. So if you just blithely operate on autopilot, kind of stumbling through life on the programming, on the conditioning, on the assumption that having more stuff is better, that spending equals happiness, that if only I could have the next iPhone or the next prestige car, then I could be happy. Well, if you kind of go through life on that consumerist autopilot, then you're kind of setting yourself up for dissatisfaction, and you're setting yourself up for being broke. The prison camp, I include it, the prison camp includes the concept of working in a job that you don't like, but there's more to it than that. So the very few people do jobs that they love. A minority of people do jobs that they truly like. So the question is, why are so many people doing jobs that don't fulfill them, that they don't like? And the answer is they are trapped by something. And what is that something? The something could be debt. I mean, it could be the fact that they have to do that job to earn money to keep up the repayments on the car lease or on the mortgage. They could be trapped by habit, by kind of thought process. They could be in a rut. They could be trapped by fear of change. And they're kind of trapped by the assumptions and the conditioning that have been planted in their heads by advertising and marketing, and this kind of idea that if you can get the next thing, then you're happy. So all of those things together make up what I call the prison camp.
But there is a way out.
There is a way out. This is not some kind of get rich quick scheme. Quite the opposite. It's not about easy answers. The reason I use that prison camp analogy is it's based, and the imagery on the site is based on the film The Great Escape. Yep. And that is a true story of Allied prisoners of war who literally dug their way out of, I think it was Stalag Luft 3, the prison of war camp in occupied Poland. And they dug it out. They dug that tunnel out of the prison camp using spoons and forks in their bare hands. That was a slow kind of rock by rock, stone by stone process. And that's kind of how it is for getting to financial independence. How do you eat an elephant? Like one chunk at a time. How do you dig your way out of the prison camp? One stone at a time.
Yeah.
And so it is about showing people that there is its option. It's about showing people there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's not about saying that it's easy. But the wonderful thing about it is that the journey and the process changes you for the better.
Absolutely. Love that.
So if you start to apply some of these principles, like, for example, maybe just drinking a bit less alcohol, which is kind of one of my flaws. If you start by drinking a bit less alcohol, you're going to have to exercise your discipline muscle. You're going to have to exercise your willpower muscle. You're going to have to find a powerful reason why you should maybe spend less on alcohol. And so, fitness is a great reason. Health's a great reason. Looking better is a great reason for doing that. And so my point is that if you kind of embark upon that journey, which may be initiated by financial considerations, what you'll find is that when you come out of the other side of the tunnel, you've actually changed in the process of that journey. You've kind of become calmer, more grounded, more centered, less kind of dissatisfied because you haven't got the latest thingy.
which is only going to be good for general well-being, for relationships with significant others, all these things. I mean, this is, many benefits other than the transparent financial benefit of being on top
let's just dive in quickly to so mental health and wellness is just a huge issue that we're not going to solve on right now, but part of the problem there is information overload that we kind of all suffer in the modern world. So if you spend a good chunk of your day indoors under fluorescent lights, plugged into a computer, flicking from your paid work to what's happening on social media and who's on holiday and here's my new car, etc. That's a pretty effective way to create anxiety and depression in a wild animal, which is essentially what we are. We're wild animals that have been caged and put in offices.
Yeah, it's and I feel like there's a trend towards being aware of that, acknowledging the link between financial health and mental well-being, such that we're starting to see some initiatives in the workplace and things like that, which I think is very positive, of course. And I'm encouraged by that trend. I'm encouraged by the more holistic view of the impact that money has. I mean, it's still the last sort of great taboo, but it seems to be softening that. And if we can, it's the trend moves towards dealing with these things head on very often and just saying, look, it's okay to address emotional well-being and all that sort of thing, then I think the future is very bright, but it's going to take a while to wash out, isn't it? It's going to take a generation or two, I think, to really for this to fully to be borne out. But it's such an important.
Well, it took us thousands of years to get here. So the current state of culture, happened as a result of the evolution of history, and you can, as we were earlier, you can trace that back, centuries. And so, and you're absolutely right. Money is one of the last taboos. And so it's easier to find someone who will tell you about their kind of sex life than it is who will tell you, what's going on in their bank account at the moment. And
we're looking at you, Love Island.
And what's driving your choices.
Yeah. And so it's good. It's good that these conversations are coming out into the open a little bit more, or at least environments are being provided to help that. So we've talked a little bit about earning more, escaping the prison camp of consumerism and the flawed link of happiness to stuff and appearances and things like that. Your number 3 step you talk about is investing the difference wisely. So you're spending less than you earn. Investing the difference wisely. I love that because there's a whole lot of detail behind there. But what does that look like for you, for most ordinary folks?
It's really, so the first thing I always start with, it's super simple to invest your own portfolio.
I agree.
The way I put it is that it's as easy to invest your own portfolio as it is to run an online bank account. And so if you are capable of running an online bank account, then you are capable of investing money and investing in the stock market, and things that people have traditionally all been told that this is very dangerous and this is very scary and this is only for grown-ups and you should be very careful and very worried about this.
Where's that messaging coming from, do you think? Gits like me is historically, well, not just like me, but my industry is guilty of that, isn't it?
Well, no, it's not solely guilty. I mean, to be fair to the financial services industry, I'm very critical of the financial services industry often, but to be fair, the regulator has forced you guys to ram these messages down people's throats at every single touch point. So every single advertisement has the kind of strap line, doesn't it? The value of shares can go down as well. You may lose your whole investment. You may lose everything. Well, if you repeat that to someone every single time they hear the word stock market or investment, that's going to create a link. And so that that's an unanticipated downside of regulation. So these regulatory risk warnings, they have downside. It has become a mantra that you can lose everything in the stock market. Every single advert has that in the small print, mandated by the regulator, and that message kind of repeated ad infinitum sinks in, and it scares people away.
Bound to, isn't it? So it's simple though. So if somebody was asking you about, where do I start? What would your answer be when it comes to investing?
Well, a great place to start is just by opening a practice account. So I suggest that to people all the time. Just open one of these practice accounts where you invest fake money, monopoly money, and just the process of doing that will just show you how easy the nuts and bolts are. And the actual keystrokes for doing that are trivially easy. You open a practice account with one of the brokers. You select a fund. It doesn't matter what fund. There's no right or wrong, and you just experience the practical keystrokes of doing that. And there's no cost and there's no risk. And now you're started.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I never thought about doing that, actually. I don't know why that hasn't occurred to me. So most of the online sort of platforms will do that. They'll sort of just sort of let you get started or sort of build like a pretend portfolio.
Yeah, so if you go to the Share Centre, for example, you can just open a practice account for them, no risk, no cost, and you can just select a fund, and you've just invested money. I mean, it's fake money, but you've just achieved that goal.
Okay, I'll put a link to the Share Centre. I don't know whether they do that. I'll check that out and put a link to it. And then,
there will be others, and I have no relationship with the Share Centre.
No.
I'm not trying to push people towards them, and I'm sure other brokers have that as well.
Yeah, other investment platforms are available. So the fourth of your step is about knowing how much is enough. So you know kind of where you're heading to, I guess. So there's a goal there, and when you've made it, is that right?
Yes. So one of the kind of classic questions is how much is enough? Like, how do I know when I no longer need to work? It's now a choice, and that's a big subject. It's a big topic. But the shorthand rule of thumb answer is that you have enough when you have invested net assets of 25 times your annual spending. Okay. So if, for example, you spend £25,000 a year, then you need 25 times 25,000, which is 625,000, and so on.
Okay. So, that almost sounds too simple, but that's perhaps my sort of overly regulated brain.
It is too simple in the sense that that is just, you could dive deep and spend your life, and people do this. People spend their life modeling retirement drawdown strategies, and there's a huge body of work by academics and by retirement researchers on that. It's just that you get most of the value, kind of think 80-20, right? You get most of the value just from knowing that 25 times rule. So you don't get 100% of the value, but you get 80+% of the value just by knowing that.
Yeah, that's nicely put. And so the rest then you could argue is refinement.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's an endless discussion in the community about whether 4% is the right safe withdrawal rates, safe being in quotes, and you can always find someone on the internet that will say that's too optimistic, because and then insert your own list of factors there: Trump, Brexit, zombie apocalypse, SARS, alien invasion. The list goes on and on.
Yeah, it's there is a whole lot of detail about it, but yeah, I like how you put that, actually, that 80% at least of the value is in just knowing that number.
Yes.
So multiply your expenses by 25 and you're going to be somewhere in the ballpark. Yeah.
The huge implication from that is that every pound that you can take off your annual cost base brings the finish line closer, not by £1, but by £25.
Yeah.
So every pound you spend or don't spend rather, every pound that you can take out of your cost base is bringing the finish line. It's bringing the amount that you need for enough down by £25. So the way I describe it is getting to financial independence is like running a marathon, but it's a marathon where you decide how long the distance is. You don't have to run for 26 miles. You can bring that closer, the finish line closer, by cutting your spending. And so kind of everyone has to put themselves on a frugality spectrum. And I suggest that they do so mindfully. So if you think about two ends of the frugality spectrum, imagine at one end, we've got Bear Grylls, okay? So Bear Grylls is already financially independent if you take all his money away from him, because his annual spending could be zero because he can eat like bugs and rodents and stuff like that. He can always, you put him in any environment on the world, he can live and thrive for free. Okay, so what's 0 times 25? 25. It's zero. So Bear Grylls is financially independent when he's broke. So we've got Bear Grylls at one end of the spectrum, and at the other end of the spectrum, we've got, I don't know, Paris Hilton or a Saudi prince. Okay, and this guy's buying a new Lamborghini each day, etc. And so those are if you like, the bookends of the frugality spectrum. And your mission is to say, okay, where do I sit? Where should I sit? Where do I sit currently on that? And where could and should I sit on that? Bearing in mind that 25 times a multiplier means that every pound you take off your spending brings the finishing line £25 closer.
Nice. That's real food for thought. My good friend Andy,
and just to finish that off, if you don't know what your spending is, you can never know if you have enough. So there is no amount of money. You can win the lottery and have £10 million. That's not enough if you don't know what your spending is.
Sure.
And one of the hilarious things about money is the fact that you're more likely to go bankrupt after you've won the lottery jackpot than you were if you never won the jackpot at all, or never won the lottery at all. That tells you something about human beings.
It really does. Just what I was going to say, lots of insight into the human psyche there and human behavior, isn't it? Yeah, for sure.
How can it be that you're more likely to go bankrupt after you've won £5+ million in the lottery back?
That ought not to make sense, and it's sad that it does, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
My good friend Andy Hart of Maven Money Podcast, Maven Advisor, he stood up at his own conference in November 2018 and said, the financial services profession needs to be extremely aware of the FIRE movement and its impact on behavior and its likely paradigm shifting effect over time. Do you think that there is any chance at all of the sort of mainstream financial services industry reimagining itself or doing more to encourage financial independence and good financial management, or do you think it's always just going to be sell as much as we can to as many people as we can?
No, I think it's going to change massively. So I think financial services is currently being disrupted in the same way that retail is being. So financial services is being disrupted by FIRE in the same way that retail is being disrupted by Amazon. It's just more apparent in terms of the high street and Amazon at the moment, because that we're further along down the curve with that. But make no mistake, the financial services industry is in the process of being disrupted.
I agree.
On many levels. I mean, you just look at the funds flow, the money into new funds, the percentage of that that's going into passive index tracking versus active funds. I mean, that tells you most of what you need to know. I mean, most people don't realize Vanguard, I think, is now the world's second biggest fund management group. I think behind BlackRock.
Yes. Something like $4.2 trillion, I think was the last figure I heard.
And yet, what percentage of the population have even heard of Vanguard in the UK? It's still relatively unknown. So this is at an early stage, all of these changes.
I'm excited by that. I think obviously the internet has disintermediated to a large extent. So, I mean, I'm always banging on about you really don't need an advisor to set up an ISA or a pension, for God's sake. It's easier than it's ever been. And that really most people don't need an advisor, at least until they're retired. Many people will get through that sort of transition point on their own anyway, but there is a lot of nuance there, and the available options for those moving into decumulation phase are complex. It can be. Depends on the individual and their circumstances, of course. So I think there's benefit, but I see financial professionals who understand how to navigate a complex tax system and things like that almost becoming coaches is almost not a strong enough word, but sort of partners in helping people move towards financial independence. Do you agree with that, or am I talking utter rubbish there?
I totally agree with that.
Okay.
I 100% agree with that.
That's encouraging.
There's a huge education job to be done here. There's a huge paradigm shift to happen here, and financial advisors have a huge positive part that they could play in that if they choose to do so. So I think your average kind of IFA is going to have to make a choice as to whether he kind of carries on with the existing model and gets disrupted, disintermediated, and destroyed by the internet and the FIRE movement, or whether he or she converts to a coaching style relationship with their clients, where they put the client's interests first, and whereby they charge fixed fees for doing that, or at least a fee structure that aligns their interests with those of the client to the greatest possible extent. And so there's this huge unmet need for that, a huge need for it. And that requires a different mindset from the customer as well as from the financial advisor. But it will become more common, and people will come to see that as the norm at some point in the future. And we'll kind of look back and laugh at the old days where your IFA just took whatever 1% of your portfolio and gave another percent to active fund managers. And in return for that, they kind of met you once a year and talked about what was happening in China. Like as if they knew.
Exactly.
So what that person will do in the future is understand where their clients are in life and support them, understand their challenges and coach them through it. If the client wants that and will pay for it, and if the client won't pay for it, then the client won't get it.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's interesting. It'd be fun for me and you to do this in 5 years' time and see if there's any move towards it. What the sort of pace of change will be. But I see the momentum increasing, which I find extremely encouraging. I'm not even remotely threatened by it. I mean, if I was, I wouldn't, I suppose, be the kind of person that been talking into this microphone for God knows how many years and just trying to get this stuff out as you are. So there is a massive education.
It's an opportunity for you because you can either be disrupted or you can be the disruptor, and you're one of the disruptors. Yeah. So it's an opportunity for you and other kind of forward-thinking IFAs to change their approach, to change their fee structure, to change their mindset, and to change how they work with clients. And the minority that do that will prosper, and the ones that don't will just find it harder and harder each year.
Yeah, absolutely right. We're actively working on that here at Jackson's, and as a sort of tandem to Meaningful Money and all that sort of stuff. So watch this space for that. But thank you for your kind words, Barney. Appreciate it. Tell me about Playing with Fire, this project that you've been involved with.
So this is the first Hollywood movie made not only about the fire movement, but it's the first Hollywood movie that anyone's ever made about personal finance. So if you think, I don't know if you know the film The Minimalists.
Yes, yeah, that's shot by Matt Diavella, who I just adore.
Okay, great. So that's a kind of niche cult film that ended up kind of going big on Netflix.
Yeah.
Just showing this concept of minimalism and just, not worshipping stuff and buying less stuff. This film, I think, is going to be the financial independence equivalent of that. It's called Playing with Fire. It's been made by a director called, brilliant name, brilliant guy, Travis Shakespeare, would you believe?
Come on.
And he's a proper grown-up Hollywood TV director. So he makes shows. He's made shows that even I've seen. Like, so he directed Top Gear USA and Ice Road Truckers and Life Below Zero and all these kind of mainstream TV shows. And so he's a pro, and he, in his spare time, has made a film on financial independence. Wow. The London premiere of that was 2 nights ago, and it was just amazing, absolutely amazing. We had like sold out audience, 200 people at RADA Studio Theatres to watch this film. And it's just what it's gonna do is it's going to make accessible these ideas to a much broader range of people than anything we've seen thus far.
So where is it going to be shown and available?
So it will end up, I think, at some point on Netflix. Before then, you'll just be able to go to a website and pay to download it.
Oh, cool, great. Okay.
Like Vimeo or something like that, or its own website. But what's currently happening, because it's just hot off the press right now, is that there's a number of city screenings going on. So there's one in there was one in San Diego. We've had one in London. There's going to be one in New York. There's going to be one in Sydney, Melbourne. So there's going to be these kind of community events where the community gets together, watches the film, and it will kind of ripple out through word of mouth.
Brilliant.
And what's amazing is that it's a great icebreaker. So you can watch it at home with friends and family that you wouldn't normally have conversations about money with. Yeah. And so I've showed it to my kids. Because if I sit my kids down and say, right, I'm going to tell you guys like what you need to do to save more money, it's like, go away, Dad. Yeah. We're not interested. No. Like, just leave us alone. Yeah. And that's the polite version. You asked me not to swear. They're teenagers.
Yeah, exactly.
But we sat down as a family, we watched the film, and they absorbed the concepts. And it's a very human story. So it shows a family's journey from kind of middle class over consumers to thoughtful, mindful people kind of on a journey of how to get smarter with their money and to how to get more freedom into their life.
Fantastic. I can't wait to see it. I wish I could have got there in London, but couldn't. But it's one of these times I really wish I lived nearer to London. Do you know what I mean? But I think that about every other week these days. But look, Barney, the time has absolutely flown. It's been a joy to speak to you. Please keep doing what you're doing, because I'm loving your work. Where can people find out more about what you're up to?
Just go to the website. So it's www.theescapeartist.me. So not .com, not .co.uk. It's theescapeartist.me. And that's the place to go.
Great stuff. I'll make sure there's a big fat link to that, man. I really appreciate your time, Barney. I'm sorry this is taking so long, but I'm glad we've done it now, and I'm sure there'll be a return visit if you're up for that. Thank you so much for joining me, my friend.
Well, when you do next come to London, give me a shout, man, and we'll meet up.
Yeah,
because I think it's an important point. This is an online community, but it only really works if you have a real world community as well. And so it'd be great to meet you for a beer or something.
For sure. Thank you for joining me, mate. Really appreciate it, Barney.
All right, nice one, Pete.
Okay, how good was that? I just loved that. Barney, the stuff he was saying about the impact on financial services of the FIRE movement, I think that's powerful, and I look forward to seeing that borne out. There's just tons of value, loads of motivation there. Definitely check out theescapeartist.me, his blog. It is fantastically written and extremely entertaining, but packed full of value as well. So I hope you caught some of Barney's enthusiasm for the whole subject. You certainly will if you go to his site. So hopefully I'll get Barney back on again before too long. Right, just a quick review this one's from Miraglio, aka Lorraine. It says, "A personal finance must" is the headline. "This review has been a long time coming, but I wanted to get the words right. PM has been life-changing." That's me, presumably not the Prime Minister. "I was already on my personal finance journey, but PM took that to a whole new level, especially when it came to taking action. His helpful no's and do's in bite-sized chunks made taking action about finance goals achievable, from budgeting to savings, pensions, and investments. I'm 30 and well on my way to financial freedom. Also met the man himself at what I call peak community drinks, and he lives up to his vocal legend, affable, knowledgeable, and welcoming. Keep up the invaluable work, Pete." Lorraine, thank you for that review, Chuck. Really appreciate it. Thank you for being part of the community as well. We had a good night, didn't we, in London last November. So thank you for leaving that review. Lorraine, you'll know when you left that review, so you know how far behind I am in catching up with these. But thank you so much for it. If you want to leave me a review, it really helps. Keeps me near the top of the rankings. MeaningfulMoney.tv /iTunes if you're of an Apple persuasion. But otherwise, wherever you are listening to me, if you can leave a review, please do so. Really, really helps. Okay, next week, over the next couple of weeks, really, I'm interviewing a couple of women who are making a big difference in helping other women to take control of their financial future. Next week is the turn of Tara Gillespie, a lady who reached out to me asking if she could use some Meaningful Money content or point people to it at some events that she's running. Led to an email conversation, and next week she's on the show. So I look forward to speaking to Tara next week. Her initiative, Financial Education for Women, is called Best Intentions, and she's doing great work. So look forward to bringing you my conversation with Tara next week. So that's it for this week's, folks. So let's cue up the music, and any questions or comments on today's show, it's at today's show notes, meaningfulmoney.tv /session330 or meaningfulmoney.tv /escapeartist. Okay, I'm sure Barney would be happy to dive in and answer any questions, but say thanks to him, and I'll say thanks again, Barney, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Thanks for listening, folks. I'll talk to you next week.